I want to bring in Chad Program live on Capitol Hill. Chad, you broke the news, and we just read it to our viewers a moment ago. What else do you have after what has been, 4 hours of questions?
Yeah, they're taking a break right now, and Andy Biggs, one of the Republicans in the room, that's the Republican representative from Arizona, he says that he thinks that the president is compromised based on some of the testimony that he's heard. Now, Devon Archer testified that there was value in adding Hunter Biden to Burisma's board to promote what he called the brand. Now, the argument was that the then vice president, Joe Biden, brought the most value to the brand. Archer also stated that Burisma would have gone under if not for the brand. Now, owners of Burisma, again, this is according to sources in the room, tried to get help from D.C. regarding Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin, and Shokin investigated Burisma for corruption. Now, the testimony today, according to the sources, revealed that Hunter Biden called D.C. about that matter, and then Archer testified that Hunter put his father, then the vice president, on the speakerphone more than 20 times. Now, Archer testified that President Biden was there to sell the brand. We've also learned that in 2014, President Biden, then the vice president, attended a business dinner at Cafe Milano in Washington, D.C. with the widow of the former Moscow mayor, who was also an oligarch. But when President Biden was in office, they never put sanctions on that particular oligarch. Now, Dan Goldman, the Democrat from New York, he is the Democrat in the room, and he walked out a few minutes ago and continues to say, look, there were some conversations, but these conversations were very casual, according to Dan Goldman. And he said they talked about the weather. We're getting a very different picture of this from Republican sources in the room, Bill.
Chad, hang on one second here. We got a little more videotape of Devon Archer here. But before I roll that, you said, Chad, that they took a break. So this interview is still underway, correct?
That's right. You know, we thought they would take about 4 hours. He didn't show up till about 10:17 or so. We were told that they would probably last until after 3 o'clock because of breaks and lunch and everything else. Again, 1 hour for the Republicans, one for the Democrats, then one for the Republicans, one for the Democrats. So you can see where you get into injury and booking time here. If you're a soccer fan, this is going to drift into the 3 o'clock hour. And we'll probably have a smattering of people come out. Jim Jordan, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, he is one of the two Republicans in the room. And I should note that any potential impeachment inquiry would fall to Jim Jordan. So I think it's notable that he is in the room, even though this closed-door transcribed interview is before the House Oversight Committee.
Okay, Chad, stand by. Don't go anywhere. I just want to roll this videotape. You were with him earlier today. He had nothing to respond to with your questions. This is during the break in the hallway. Devon Archer, watch.
Mr. Archer, how important was the Biden brand to your business?
Some may conclude less productive than you would expect there. Chad, do we see a story that is sliding here now? When you put together what you just reported with Dan Goldman, the Democrat from New York, saying that there were conversations, but they were innocent, essentially. You put that with what Karine Jean-Pierre said about a week ago, never in business, so the language changes there. Is this a story that is slipping?
It appears that there are some changes, certainly from what the White House said a couple of days ago from the press secretary. Again, and it might be an issue of interpretation when Dan Goldman says, well, these were casual conversations. Did they just put, the vice president on the horn? But keep in mind that if you're dealing with people overseas and you're the son of the vice president, now the president, and you put him on the speakerphone, that is going to carry a certain amount of weight, especially when you're dealing with this question of the Ukrainian prosecutor, Viktor Shokin. And that's what Republicans are trying to get at here, saying, wait a minute, even though these were casual conversations, and maybe they have a little more meat on the bone, Bill, that's something we might not know until they put out the transcript of this interview, perhaps Thursday or Friday. But, Dan Goldman might present this as a casual conversation. But just the fact that they switch from, the headset onto the speakerphone and you hear the vice president coming through the line there, that probably carries a little more weight.
Chad, I'm curious whether any of your sources has said to you whether anybody in that closed-door deposition probed Archer further about his claim that Biden was put on speakerphone when he was vice president. Did anybody ask follow-up questions about the content of what then Vice President Biden said when he was on speakerphone? It seems to me that would be central.
You see, and that's exactly it. And that's why that transcript is going to be so important. And that's where, as I say, maybe Dan Goldman says, well, yes, they did, in fact, talk. He's conceding that point, but it really wasn't much. Was the imprimatur, though, to put the vice president on the phone and then say, look, this is the implication. You're not supposed to do this with this prosecutor. You're supposed to help Burisma. Burisma is struggling. That's an issue of interpretation. And this is where maybe the letter and the syllable of what is said in the transcript appears very different when it comes out, and Dan Goldman can say, look at the transcript. But if you're the Republicans and you say, wait a minute, just having the vice president on the phone there, that tells us something else. And the other thing that we've not talked about here in this conversation, and I alluded to it this morning, is that there were new bank records which were presented and discussed. And we don't know what was said in those conversations this morning. I was told there were new bank records that they would question Devon Archer about Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. So again, is there a little more meat on the bone in that area? On
that point, Kazakhstan has not come up a lot in the reporting on the story.
First time I've heard it in this inquiry,
yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you think it deals with? Do we know?
That we don't know.
What about China? Any questions to Devon Archer about Hunter Biden's involvement with Chinese-backed businesses?
We've not seen that. Again, as I was told this morning, and it was specific to those three nations, but we just don't know yet. Again, and that's why that transcript, whenever it comes out, is going to be very awaited here in Washington, D.C., probably the most awaited document during the August recess. As I always say, beware the Ides of August, so that probably comes out in August. I'm told that it might take a little bit longer than 3 or 4 days, simply because they have to go through to make sure that everything is accurate. They have to talk to the counsels on both sides. They have to talk to Archer's counsel. They also might have to talk to the court. Is there something, and this is something people have not talked about, that is revealed in that publicized transcript that then pertains to the Hunter Biden blown-up plea deal in Delaware, and the judge looks at that, and does that become a factor in this? We just don't know. That's going to be very explosive when that comes out, because people want to see, does it make the case that Republicans are making? And again, when I talked to a lot of Republican members here on Capitol Hill, they were telling me before the recess, and they started the recess a little bit early, that they thought, some of the more conservative members, that they had the goods on President Biden maybe to start that impeachment inquiry. And this is where the pressure starts on House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He kind of dipped his toe into the impeachment waters with Merrick Garland about 2 weeks ago, went a little bit further last week. You had some Republicans, Bob Good of Virginia, saying that this is a paradigm shift. So does Kevin McCarthy, over the August recess, have to make a decision about impeachment? And they always say that history does not necessarily repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was resistant to moving down the impeachment road with former President Trump. There was the phone call in late July of 2019, and by the middle of August, she realized that this was going in a certain direction because her members were pushing for impeachment, and impeachment was on by September. This kind of mirrors this. This is where I always talk about August being the most dangerous political month. Weird things happen in August. This could be an example of that. Beware the Ides of August.
Chad, let's talk about the transcript you mentioned for a moment. Do you know, obviously it'll be up to you.
And I'm looking down here at my phone here because I just wanted to see if I got a message about this. No, go ahead. That wasn't pertaining to this, but go ahead.
Oh, so when it comes to the transcript, do you think it'll ultimately be up to the committee to decide if they're going to release it and how they're going to release it, meaning if it's going to have redactions, if it's not going to? Is DOJ going to get a say in what or is not released publicly as well, considering they have now said publicly, or at least in federal court last week, that they are still actively investigating Hunter Biden for other potential crimes?
I don't know that DOJ necessarily has a say, but you could see if there is, certain information that is privileged or certain information that needs to be redacted or it falls into the intelligence world that they have to, redact that or review that. That could take a little more time. Could you be looking at a fight to get this out at the end of the week and it drags into the week after that? Possibly, just because there's so many different cooks in the kitchen on this. I'm not certain that DOJ would have a say in this.
Okay. Chad, do you understand the construct inside this meeting real quick? before we're bringing Jonathan Turley, because Jim Jordan came out and said it's very productive. You said about an hour and a half ago. Is he running this Q&A?
No, because he's not the chair of this committee. It's the Oversight Committee. It's James Comer, but James Comer is not, in fact, there. This is mostly being run by the counsels and the investigators that they have on both sides.
Understood. We'll let you go to the next hour. Chair, good reporting there. Thank you so much.